Welcome to Blaze News, the mandate day 3. Yesterday, President Donald Trump took a major step in establishing America's sovereignty when he banned the creation of central bank digital currency. The executive order also establishes a presidential working group to produce federal regulatory framework to govern digital assets, which includes cryptocurrency. And this seems to be just the beginning of Trump keeping his campaign promises related to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. The Senate also confirmed its second Trump nominee, John Ratcliffe, to head the CIA. Watch.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
20 Democrats voted with Republicans in support of Ratcliffe's nomination. And while his confirmation process was pretty painless, other nominees will probably face a tougher fight like Tulsi Gabbard. We'll have more on her later in the show. The Senate confirmed Marco Rubio as Secretary of State this past Monday, and on his first day in the position, Rubio immediately moved to implement President Trump's plan for foreign aid. He initiated a review of all American foreign assistance with the consistency with Trump's foreign aid agenda. And President Trump headed to North Carolina and Los Angeles this morning to survey the damage from Hurricane Helene and the deadly wildfires. Watch.
We're going to North Carolina. It's been a horrible thing, the way that's been allowed to fester, and we're going to get it fixed up. Should have been done months ago from the hurricane that took place almost 4 months ago. North Carolina's been treated very badly, so we're stopping there, and we're going to then go to Los Angeles and take a look at a fire that could have been put out if they let the water flow, but they didn't let the water flow, and they still haven't for whatever reason. So I think we're going to have a very interesting time.
He's doing so much in just a few short days as president. And House Republicans are looking to shave between $2.5 and $3 trillion in spending and budget cuts to fund their reconciliation package, which would include tremendous tax cuts. So with all that, let's bring in Matthew Peterson now. I look at this, and let's start with the central bank digital currency, right? This is one of the things that has been talked about on like Glenn Beck program for years. And so many people are out there saying, oh, we better watch out for this. Well, Donald Trump now says an executive order, you can't be herded into this electronic system.
Yeah, I mean, how great is that? This is one of the central worries that people have when it comes to the tyrannization of finance. I mean, basically centralizing all banking services to take power and control your life. There's a reason Glenn Beck talks about it. There's a reason everyone's terrified of it, because you would have just a kind of control over money and monetary transactions that's almost impossible to imagine until recently. For Trump just to say, nope, we're not doing that. Not only is that important here, it's important for the rest of the world, because it shows people, oh no, you can be a modern Western nation and absolutely reject this noise.
And Trump can go out and just be a boss in 4 days and say, you know what, I'm going to go visit Western North Carolina and talk to the people. It was so important to so many people out there in North Carolina today that Trump once spoke to them and said that he was going to try and, either eliminate FEMA or completely redo it. But then he also took time to listen to the people who have lost everything and the power of that when they had been basically forgotten about for 4 months, to have the current president then come in and say, I see you. I want to hear your stories as well.
Yeah, enormously important. It shows everything about what this presidency actually cares about. I mean, Jill, you were there before Biden, right?
Yeah.
Before
we were there the second, the first weekend after everything had cleared out.
Yeah, and that's just indicative of the problem. So I think it was very important to the president to go out and say, no, we care about Americans. We're going to divert money that's going to illegal immigrants to the people there, and we're going to show up and say hi. And they can also go to LA. So you have to remember, the rest of the country has forgotten about this. The rest of the mainstream media has forgotten about it. We haven't, but people there are still suffering. And it says everything about Trump's presidency and why he won.
And one of the other things that is really important that is happening today is the March for Life. And I know, let's go ahead and listen to Trump pardoning some of the pro-life protesters.
Next, we have a set of pardons for peaceful pro-life protesters who were prosecuted by the Biden administration for exercising their First Amendment rights.
Do you know how many?
I believe it's 23, sir.
23 people were prosecuted. They should not have been prosecuted. Many of them are elderly people. They should not have been prosecuted. This is a great honor to sign this.
Yeah, and so many people have been impacted by this and wondering, like, is the FBI going to come after me next, right? If they were just going to go out there and peacefully protest, which is allowed in this country. But if you did it on a side of an issue that they didn't like, they were going to use the weight of the federal government to come down on you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the worst developments in my lifetime, right? For Americans to be persecuted based on their political beliefs. When it comes to protesting the government, one side can do whatever it wants and the other side goes to jail. I mean, this bordered on real insanity, and it was really Soviet. It was really a Soviet sort of policy. To see Trump say it's an honor to sign this, nope, we're not doing that here. Unbelievable, very enormous for pro-lifers everywhere, but really for all Americans.
Yeah, so Trump signed that, and then J.D. Vance was out there marching with the people for the March for Life. It's nice to see somebody from the administration actually going out there and supporting this pro-life agenda. Yeah,
so my daughter and wife were there today, and you have J.D. Vance coming out as an easy win, right? Very prominent, famous vice presidential candidate with more popularity than usual. And of course, Trump famously appeared when, people like Bush wouldn't even go because for some reason it was controversial. Just think about how far we have come, right? Where Trump just signs this, nope, we're going to pardon these people. This is ridiculous. J.D. Vance, of course, he's going to show up and give a rousing speech.
Yeah, Republicans seem to listen to everything that Trump is doing right now. Don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we'll tell you how Trump gets all of the Republicans to fall in line during the confirmation process. Chris Bedford's interview will explain next. As we welcome the new year, it's time to focus on what matters most: creating healthier habits, enjoying more moments at home, and spending less money on going out to eat. GoodRanchers.com is here to help you turn all of your resolutions into solutions. So when you buy your meat from Good Ranchers, you're directly supporting local farms and ranches in the United States and skipping the chaos and the imported meat from the grocery store. Good Ranchers delivers high-quality, 100% American meat straight to your door, so you can start 2025 with better choices, better meals, and better moments at home. Visit GoodRanchers.com and use my code Jill to claim $25 off, free express shipping, and your choice of free ground beef, chicken, or salmon in every order for an entire year. If spending more time with family and less money going out to eat and enjoying quality, nutritious American food is on your resolution list this year, then be sure to visit GoodRanchers.com and use my code Jill today for meat that delivers just that. GoodRanchers.com. Use my code Jill to claim $25 off and get free meat in every box for a year. GoodRanchers.com. American meat delivered. Blaze senior politics editor Chris Bedford recently sat down with Mark Lucas. He's the executive vice president of the Article 3 Project to discuss his work on pushing Trump's nominees through the confirmation process. Take a look.
I'm here with Mark Lucas, executive vice president of the Article 3 Project, which has become among the most aggressive Republican/conservative/MAGA organizations out there, pushing confirmations and other different projects through Capitol Hill, a place where I think that the reason why Article 3 Project was founded was because Mike Davis, your co-founder, saw just how tenacious and effective the Democrats were capable of being in the Kavanaugh and Gorsuch hearings, and thought, well, I think there ought to be something on the right. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
Right now, you've been working on the different confirmations. I know in the past you're friends with Pete Hegseth. You worked with him at Concerned Veterans for America when you were in that world. But what's up next is Tulsi Gabbard is a big one. Marco Rubio and people like him, they kind of sailed through. They did well. They're of the system. They're from the system. Tulsi Gabbard is a former Democratic congresswoman who has questioned intelligence. How dare she? Coming up now against Senate Republicans who don't seem that open. So before we get into the weeds, first, could you tell us a little bit about the Director of National Intelligence, which is what she's up for being confirmed as, and what kind of role Trump is hoping that she can play in his administration?
It's such an important role, and one of the things I love about Tulsi Gabbard is, like myself, she served in the National Guard. She was in the Hawaii National Guard as a military police officer. She's deployed to combat. So she understands the intelligence world from a boots on the ground perspective. And we've seen that the intelligence agencies have been weaponized against people like President Trump, and she will bring order to those agencies. So for her, I think the intelligence agencies have gotten too big. I think they're collecting way too much information. They lack focus. And when you have people like her or Pete Hegseth or myself who have served in combat zones, we want to make sure that our intelligence, number one, is correct, but that it's focused. And when you have an unfocused intelligence community and you're collecting too much, you can't focus on the threats that are imminent. And we saw that really up close and personal with the attack of New Orleans.
And that is kind of what the DNI does in general. It's a post 9/11 position to coordinate and help bring focus to what the CIA is working on, what other aspects of the intelligence world are working on. But so why her? Why is she getting this sort of pushback? There's just started over the last 24, 36 hours. There's been articles in Axios and Semaphore and in other newspapers going after Gabbard with a whisper campaign of Republican senators on the committee, none of whom attached their names, trying to undermine her confirmations. They're listing off that she went to Syria when she was a member of Congress, as if congressmen aren't allowed to visit war zones. They listed off her support in the past for Edward Snowden, which I know is controversial in the Senate. What is the goal of this whisper campaign? Why is she a threat in a way that other nominees really aren't to some of the Senate Republican consensuses?
I believe there are two reasons why Tulsi is such a threat. Number one, she's an outsider, right? She's not a part of the club. She wasn't a part of those 51 former intelligence officers who are targeting President Trump. She comes from an outsider perspective, and they fear the reform that she's going to bring to all of these agencies. That's number one. Also, I think the second reason why she is such a threat is that she's a Democrat, former Congresswoman. She was a part of this incredible coalition that President Trump built on his campaign, which also included RFK Jr. So I believe that Tulsi poses a major threat to the Democrat Party, because if she can defect, and if RFK Jr. can also defect and help President Trump and really help America and our America First policy priorities, she could ruin the Democratic Party.
Who are some of the senators that you think are worth really looking at or putting pressure on in this campaign? Who are some of, I know that Tom Cotton is the chairman. So far, he's been pretty quiet on this whisper campaign. Blaze has reached out to him with requests for comment. We'll see if we can get some news on that. Who are some of the senators who are really, do you think, leading this push against Gabbard?
I'd say let's contact every United States senator. And the reason why I bring that up is these confirmations have multiple phases. And when we saw with the announcement of Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel, the conventional wisdom in Washington was that those nominations were dead on arrival. And we had certain Republican senators express a little concern, and they were quickly given an attitude adjustment due to our major media blitz. Mike Davis and I went on every outlet we could to defend them. We mobilized our grassroots army, and you can go to the Article 3 Project website. We have an action center where people can contact their senator via phone, email, and social media. And we were able to lob in tens of thousands of messages over a couple weeks. And those senators went from questioning those nominees to when can they start. So with Tulsi and with RFK in particular, I would say I haven't seen people that have been overly vocal because of A3P's efforts with Kash Patel and also with Pete Hegseth. But as we get into the hearings, which are scheduled for next week, we finally have Tulsi Gabbard's hearing scheduled for Thursday. We'll start to see where the cracks are. But I think a lot of these Republican senators are taking a wait and see approach. They don't want to get too far ahead of anything because they know that the grassroots supports Tulsi, RFK, and President Trump's nominees.
Yeah, and you were instrumental in helping to basically knock the wind out of Senator Joni Ernst, who was the most vocal initially against Hegseth. She changed her vote publicly. McConnell, who I think probably put her up to the whole thing, of course, was silent the entire time. But the neoconservatives have the wind back. They've caught their breath again. They seem to be pushing for this again. They're worried about any changes to the intelligence world. They're worried about they're not really worried about Ratcliffe over at the CIA. He's not going to flip over the apple cart, I don't think. We'll be in a good nominee, a solid nominee. It's not going to change everything around like Tulsi Gabbard could. But what you talked about her ability to have an impact on the intelligence gathering. What could a director of national intelligence really do to actually reform intelligence, the intelligence apparatus? Or is she more just going to be a voice on the inner council who is maybe more skeptical than some of her colleagues?
I think it's both. In all of the above approach, I believe there's 18 different agencies in the intelligence community that has been created since 9/11. You know, I remember I joined the military after 9/11. I was all in to go to Afghanistan. I wanted to kill the people that were responsible for the attacks of 9/11. I even bought what they were saying about Iraq. I believed in that they had weapons of mass destruction. So you have these post 9/11 people like Tulsi, myself, and Pete Hegseth who believed in the cause. But we saw this huge growth in our government. We saw the Department of Homeland Security and all these agencies that were supposed to protect us from another 9/11. But instead, we've seen those agencies, which I believe were created by a lot of people with a good intent, we've seen them weaponized. So I believe that Tulsi Gabbard will be able to look at those from an outsider approach as a military officer who's actually served in Afghanistan overseas and be able to say, okay, let's reduce the scope, let's bring it focused. And then also she can provide that counsel, like you had mentioned before, to the president, and she'll be able to work really closely with Pete Hegseth and others across the cabinet to really streamline this intelligence operation.
And I would like to just have someone in the inner circle who takes a jaundiced eye to Senator Mitch McConnell's defense appropriations. Is able to take a look at it and be able to get right to the president's ear. But she's not the only nominee you're working on who's under fire. She's the most obvious because she's the one who really does, I think, challenge the deep state in a way that, well, the deep state, of course, cares about outsiders. They don't like anything to really be changed. RFK's mission to try and make America healthy again doesn't threaten any kind of global liberal orders. It threatens the sugar lobby. So why are groups like Mike Pence's group trying to go after RFK and sink his nomination?
Well, RFK Jr. is one of the most fascinating nominees that we have. And he really broke the mold. I mean, this is a member of the Kennedy family who is being rejected by the Democrat Party. So he poses one of the biggest threats to Democratic politics. But also, he is going to go in there and there's no sacred cows at HHS with, like you said, the sugar industry, making America healthy again, the food industry. We have major entrenched interest that he's going to challenge, and he's got the right vision. He just wants to make people healthy again. I mean, how can you be against that? But he's going to face strong headwinds. And one of the things I enjoy most about RFK Jr. is that he is hyper-focused on Tony Fauci. And for me, I served in the Iowa Army National Guard, and they tried to force the vaccine on me. And I was in a position where I said no. I had a stellar record in Afghanistan. I led soldiers in combat. I was a company commander here at home. I was an S3 operations officer. I was on the fast track to be a battalion commander. I was the type of guy that you want in the military. And they sat me down and they formally counseled me for rejecting the COVID-19 vaccine. And President Joe Biden didn't have my back. Lloyd Austin didn't have my back. All I want to do is make a choice. RFK Jr. understands that. He's not anti-vaccine. He's pro-freedom. He wants us to make these medical decisions that are based off what's best for us. And that threatens a lot of people in the establishment.
So what is upsetting Pence's group then? The former vice president's been working with Leonard Leo, who's generally done some good work over the past, but to actually launch a campaign critical of RFK Jr. And I understand. I mean, I'm a observant Catholic in good standing, very pro-life. We'll be in and around the March for Life tomorrow on Friday. But he doesn't really see HHS. He's not going to be touching the abortion policy if the president doesn't want him to touch the abortion policy. You know, he's long been a pro-choice Democrat or pro-abortion Democrat, but that's not what he's going in there. It seems like he's more, like you said, a threat to the vaccination lobby. I mean, just living in Northern Virginia, trying to find a pediatrician who is willing to allow parents a little bit of options and flexibility and choice on the scheduling of vaccinations for newborns, who was willing to answer your questions about why this vaccination is important or why it isn't, what the threats are, without just politicizing it, attacking you, is so incredibly difficult. This is a thing that families all over the country are facing, and he's a threat to it. So, is it really just the abortion issue that's upsetting Pence and other conservatives, or is it deeper than that?
I think Mike Pence is desperately fighting for relevance. And let's remember, when he was the former governor of Indiana, he was long forgotten. He wasn't a serious political contender, and Donald Trump, the candidate, resurrected Mike Pence's political career. And when Pence decided to try to primary President Trump, that was his last chance of being elected president. So I think we have kind of a sad tale here of a guy that wants to remain relevant. He's looking for a way to do that. And I guess by him trying to lean on his pro-life credentials by attacking RFK Jr., that's his last hope. But I'm also a pro-life Catholic. I take my faith very seriously. I trust President Trump and RFK Jr. when they say that RFK Jr. is going to be focused on HHS. He's not going to be focused on abortion-related matters, and that he'll defer to Trump and also to J.D. Vance on those matters.
So aside from these two, which have gathered a lot of headlines, who are some of the other nominees that you're working on, and especially in any kind of a manner that Trump's administration really has been doing on overdrive, challenging the vested interests in Washington and essentially the career bureaucrats, the blob, the way things are done and not supposed to ever be challenged? Who are some of the other candidates that you're keeping an eye on, or battles that you're keeping an eye on?
Pam Bondi as the Attorney General, and also Kash Patel as the Director of the FBI. We are very excited about those two picks. A3P's founder, Mike Davis, is personal friends with both of them. He's helping advise them through the confirmation process. And Kash Patel is the most popular nominee that we have seen at Article 3 Project, just due to the number of actions that grassroots people have taken. We have seen how the Department of Justice and the FBI were weaponized against a former president. And the American people resonate with the fact that if our government could effectively target a former president and a billionaire, then none of us stand a chance. I sure as heck don't stand a chance here in Iowa. So that's why we are so excited about Kash Patel and Pam Bondi going into those institutions, reforming them, holding the bad actors accountable. Nobody is above the law, as President Joe Biden said, and we look forward to holding these people accountable because we believe that there was a criminal conspiracy against the rights of a former United States president. Those bad actors have to be held to account, and that's why we need Kash Patel and Pam Bondi to be confirmed as quickly as possible.
And I think it looks like Kash Patel, I know you have to go in a minute, so I'll wrap this up, but it looks like Kash Patel's going to end up facing and having an answer for the president's pardons of January 6th defendants and convicted. Do you think that the Republicans are going to be able to hold strong on that? Doesn't seem like Republicans were completely silent about the treatment of January 6th prisoners. I mean, it took Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders to have to raise a hand and say, shouldn't these people have a trial after a year of people rotting in prison? Well, now President Trump's released them. He said this is over, this is done, this political persecution is over. It seems like this may be a tactic that Kash Patel is going to face. Do you have any insider knowledge on where Republicans might fall if it comes down to that?
Republicans understand that the pardon of those January 6th defendants is a political winner. The American people knew that justice was not being served. And this is all a deception technique by the Democrats to deflect the attention away from Joe Biden's pardons of people like Tony Fauci and also General Mark Milley. And as a former military officer, I believe that General Mark Milley committed treason. He not only embarrassed our country with the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan that resulted in the deaths of 13 service members at Abbey Gate, but he also potentially committed treason. So I think that with Kash Patel, during his nomination or during his confirmation hearing, he'll do a great job. He'll understand when they're playing politics and how to focus on the issues. And really, Pete Hegseth, out of the gate, he kind of set the tone. He showed the rest of the nominees how to effectively navigate those confirmation hearings, and I believe that Kash Patel will knock it out of the ballpark.
Mr. Lucas from Article 3 Project, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
Chris Bedford will join us to break down this interview and Tulsi Gabbard's tough confirmation process next. Well, we could see increased tariffs on our trade partners, tax cuts, and regulation changes. So you need to learn why gold is a viable diversification tactic now more than ever. Birch Gold is releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. So to get your free copy, along with Birch Gold's free information kit, text my name, Jill, to the number 989898. And here are the facts that we know. The national debt continues to increase. Our interest payments on the national debt continue to increase, so gold is still your hedge against a weakened dollar. And Birch Gold can help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. Text Jill to 989898 for your free copy for the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. There's no obligation. It's only going to be information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, countless 5-star reviews, and thousands of happy customers, you too can trust Birch Gold. Text my name, Jill, to the number 989898 today. Now to break down Tulsi Gabbard and the rest of the confirmation nominees, Chris Bedford joins us now for his interview with Mark Lucas. So, Chris, what points did Mark make that really are sticking out in your mind now?
I think actually one thing that was interesting that he brought up was the ability that Tulsi Gabbard actually does have to make a difference. I mean, the Director of National Intelligence is a post that does not have the power that it did initially after 9/11. And you will hear people say, including some Republicans who are toying with a no vote or a yes vote, that it's got no budget behind the office. How much damage could it actually do, even if she disagreed with us? But he made the point, I think correctly and interestingly, that she has the ability to help guide the intelligence agencies, that she is kind of the conduit and person in between. She has the ability to direct the mission. And of course, another source who I talked to for the Beltway brief, who used to be giving the Oval Office briefings previously under President Barack Obama, pointed out that the DNI is the person who gets to decide which intelligence briefings are placed on the president's desk. Now, that's important to take a jaundiced dive. Remember, I think it was at the end of Trump's first term when there was this big hullabaloo in Washington, D.C. We have to go to war with Moscow right away because Russian soldiers are paying bounties to Taliban to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan. You saw Liz Cheney, that totally useful idiot, out there banging the hammer and yelling about this. You saw newspapers calling for war. Nobody sat back and said, when it turned out to not be true, oh, we're sorry, that was pretty close, we got there. That's because you need that jaundiced eye. You need someone like Tulsi who's in there. And even though the CIA is going to be in more, I would say, traditional hands, National Security Council is going to be in more traditional hands, having someone in the room is an important step in the right direction. And that's why she's being opposed by so many Republican neocons and people who are just generally more hawkish.
Well, one of the things that stood out to me in that interview is that Mark said that Kash Patel is one of the most popular nominees. And we see a lot of the popularity for Trump's picks. There's a lot of enthusiasm out there, but Kash seems to be that number one guy that everybody just wants to rally around right now.
He's got a lot of momentum with the Republican Party. He looks like he's got the committee locked up. I've been talking to members specifically of Kash's team today for a Beltway brief coming out Monday that previews all the hearings that are coming up, the most contentious ones. And they're looking at this as kind of a bullseye. They have their 3 most contentious hearings all on Thursday, the 30th, which means that, as one person said, Democrats' heads are going to be on a swivel. Right now, it looks like they've got the committee members actually locked in and supporting Kash Patel's nomination. Now, I'll preview on Monday, I don't want to blow it all here, how Democrats do intend to attack Kash, because it's changed from what we saw with Pam Bondi, and how that attack could actually make some weak-kneed Republicans who like to look under their bed before they go to sleep at night skittish. But right now, it looks like Kash Patel is going to be a lock, barring something insane. And the discipline that we have seen executed by Trump's nominations team and the murder boards that they've put these nominees through and the smoothness of the answers that they have has been impressive. So I don't expect that to happen.
Yeah, to see that preparation so far, at least, is great. All I can think about when you mentioned Cash is the Cash meme, which is just a real picture of him looking sort of wild-eyed. But I know why he's popular, because you look at him and you think, that's the guy I want on my wall. I want him to go into the FBI with that crazy face. I mean, that's the imagery of it, is that, yeah, he's a fighter, and that's who people want. I doubt that popularity will change.
Democrats aren't really worried about RFK Jr. They're not going to get many points with their base. I mean, RFK Jr.'s ideas are basically what middle-class Democrat voters have held in their ideas already previously. It's new to Republican circles since COVID, but that's a good thing. They're not even going to get a lot of points with their base for sinking Tulsi Gabbard. That's why you see most of the opposition coming from within the GOP. Kash Patel is a different animal. I mean, he literally wrote a children's book about like a Trump fantasy, the plot against the king. He's as MAGA as they get, and we wouldn't really know what was going on in the FBI and Department of Justice and how corrupt it was if it wasn't for Cash's outside investigations with the House Representatives. So Democrats do not want him on the inside.
Yeah, very, very energetic. Remember talking to him about one of his entrepreneurial enterprises a year or two ago, and he's got a lot of energy. Love it. So in the interview, Mark mentions this whisper campaign against Tulsi, and you wrote about this in the Beltway Brief. Talk to the audience a little bit about what's behind that nasty campaign.
That's Republican neoconservatives, essentially, and people who are more hawkish, people who will not bode anyone questioning the blob. By the way, the reason why Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat, who, by the way, is not always correct on issues, I would take issue personally with her fondness for Edward Snowden, who openly betrayed the United States, which he's very different from Julian Assange, who's at least a pseudo-journalist of some sort. She's not always correct, but she's an independent thinker, and she's necessary because the blob has been so wrong so consistently for over 50 years, 60, 70 years, really since the start of the Cold War. Ronald Reagan tried to fight this when he was president, and he did so successfully. John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon tried to fight it as well, and, well, the results were difficult for them, certainly. But the Republicans now, nameless senators, started off with a piece in Jewish Insider magazine, which I had not really heard of, but I went to yesterday, and its pages are filled with neoconservative Republican attacks against different parts of the Trump foreign policy agenda and very specific nominees, very much down in the weeds. This is a publication, I'd heard of it, but not actually been reading it, even more aggressive than the Washington Free Beacon, for example, in some of those areas. Within 12 hours of it being published there, it was being repeated in Axios and Semaphore with their own actual sourcing, which means that these Republican senators, who won't go on the record and give their name, are actually talking to reporters to try and create this look like her momentum is faltering. But again, if her momentum was really faltering, then they'd be putting their name out there. So Beltway Brief, we reached out to Tom Cotton, the chairman of the committee, and said, are you planning to say something publicly? You're planning to back the president's nominee. He's certainly a member of the more hawkish wings of the party, if not exactly a democracy promotion guy. And within 35 minutes of us reaching out to him, his office had sent out a tweet affirming support for Tulsi Gabbard, not giving her name, not saying I support Tulsi Gabbard, but we support Donald Trump's nominees that deserve a fair hearing. And as the FBI documents cleared yesterday morning, he was very quick to schedule her hearing for Thursday, which are all good signs. I mean, it just takes a little bit of courage to put these things in the box. The Republicans could take 3 no votes, and it's very difficult to actually be that 4th no vote who goes against President Trump and then bombs his nomination. That's a political risk. 5, 6, 7 no votes, it's easy. It doesn't take any courage at all. But that 4th vote is dangerous, and the Republicans, Team Trump right now needs to dissuade Republicans from daring be that 4th vote.
I like it. Bedford's wielding his influence out there on Capitol Hill. But you also wrote about the DNI and how their influence is greater than their actual power. Break that down for us.
Well, that's what we were just talking about a little while ago. She doesn't have a massive staff. The DNI doesn't have a huge budget. The DNI can't tell CIA agents what to do, but they could direct the CIA, essentially, which trajectory to take. They could direct all those different intelligence agencies that you heard so much about under Donald Trump's first term, which direction the president wants to take. And the director of national intelligence, will be the person who has the final say on which intelligence is placed in front of the president of the United States. Now, remember, this is the hardest job in the world. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen that are below the president's pay grade. You only go to the president with the hardest problems to tackle. But it's easy also, and we've really learned over the last almost century, but it's been drawn into stark contrast and made public over the last 8 years, how intelligence agencies are able to manipulate politicians. We also saw this, and vice versa. We saw this during the George W. Bush presidency. We saw this during Barack Obama's presidency and Joe Biden's presidency, and we will almost certainly see it again under this presidency. That's why you want someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who is just going to be a more independent thinker in charge of that briefing book and what goes in front of POTUS.
Well, Bedford, thanks so much for doing a lot of the heavy lifting today on the show. We really appreciate you.
Good. I want to help you guys get out and enjoy your Friday evening.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon.
See you then.
What executive order would you sign? We'll have your answers just ahead. How far will a teacher go to save a kid on the brink of losing everything? From Angel Studios, the studios behind Sound of Freedom, comes Brave the Dark. It's an inspiring true story about a troubled teen struggling to survive in a world that's let him down. Haunted by torturous childhood memories, Nate Williams finds himself engulfed in darkness when his drama teacher, Mr. Deen, bails him out of jail and takes him in, and Nate must confront his past before it leads him down his own destruction. Brave the Dark reminds us that one meaningful connection can change everything. This powerful film will leave you uplifted and inspired as it shows the strength of compassion and the impact of never giving up on someone. I encourage everyone to go out there and see Brave the Dark in theaters now. Get your tickets today at angel.com/Jill. That's angel.com/Jill. Well, there have been so many executive orders this week. I really thought we had to ask that question for the audience today. I asked you, what executive order would you sign on day one if you were president? And we have a couple of viewer responses for you. Mr. Excuse Me answered, so many ideas, ending all lobbying, bribing, investing, or any other money by money-making schemes by, for, and of congressional members and their offices. Matthew, it's a lofty goal. I mean, if we're gonna throw things out there, we might as well aim high.
I love the goal. As someone said, money is the mother's milk of politics, and good luck with that. But we have to fight this kind of corruption. So I'm all for that.
I'm all for it as well. I just think that would be one of the more difficult ones, right? As Chris Bedford likes to say, they're all press releases until you can actually go through and implement them as an executive order. That one might be a little hard to implement with the players that we would be dealing with. John Kuntz also submitted an answer. He said, on the final day in office, an executive order banning subsequent executive orders for anything that should be legislated instead. Make the House and Senate actually legislate again. Make legislation great again? Is this what we're going to do?
I mean, John's got a great point there. Great guy. I know John. Interesting guy. So, look, make Congress again is a real thing, right? We do have to have Congress legislate again. I do think that one of the ways to do that might be a lot of executive orders that are really authoritative for the executive office to assert its power and then get Congress to respond. But I like his point. I also like executive orders to the extent because all the executive power is vested in the president, right?
Correct. He has that ability to do it.
But it is true, like he should be trying to push Congress to legislate. Absolutely.
Listen, we can start the executive order first, and then we can get the legislation to back it up so it's lasting after that. I would be all for that. Our buddy here in the building, Jason Buttrill, came up with one. He says taxation is theft. Mandates that American taxpayers will now have to cut a check to the federal government every quarter for taxes owed. Nothing will be automated automated. Nothing will be more based than that when people have to go out there and actually cut their own check into the IRS. He said this will coincide with a government review of the 16th Amendment. IRS to be cut by 90% for staffing and funding. The remaining 10% needs to move their offices to the basement of some random building in Delaware because who likes Delaware? Sole responsibility of the IRS staff to prepare for the repeal of the 16th Amendment and lose those quarterly checks after repeal day. We're getting closer to April, you guys. I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people, myself included, this whole idea that they just take it out and you don't notice it, it really is crazy. I mean, it really does. That's the way that everyone got sleepy. So if anyone had to actually cut that check, everyone would have a pitchfork.
Yeah, if you're your own business, you have to cut those checks. And you know how hard that is to actually go through. I mean, who physically writes a check anymore? But when you would actually physically write that check, it was painful to do. We actually have a fun one for Matthew Peterson because Donald Trump, there's a fun meme out there online. Let's go ahead and pull that one up. Donald Trump. No more rigged Chiefs games, executive order. Somebody put that out there as a meme online. You have a vested interest in this one. Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I saw last week Donald Trump defeat the entire establishment, every major institution in the country to become president. And this week I'm going to see Josh Allen do the same with every NFL official and the entire NFL against him. And he's going to have to not only beat the Chiefs, but beat those people as well as Taylor Swift. So, I mean, I'm all for that. The problem is, like, again, the executive order, how's that going to make it happen? You know, because you have to go in there and get rid of the NFL officials. You have to get rid of the commissioner. He's a terrible person. I don't know how we do that. Now, the difference between me and you is I'm going to be watching the game on my couch, and you're going to actually be there at Arrowhead Stadium. Yeah, we have to be there. I mean, this is history. We got to be there. We think, you know. Are they going to overcome this time? Yeah, we've had some classic games. I mean, I don't want to jinx anything, you know, but I think that they indeed can, and they have to. They've been beat 3 times by the Chiefs. The whole nation is for them. Buffalo Bills are America's team now. Let's go. All right, now segue into your final action steps for the weekend from there. You want me to say something important? I do. You know, what I want to talk about today is just briefly is the March for Life, which really brings out 2 different examples or 2 different themes that you can apply in your own life when you think about what ought to be done and what needs to be done in order to save this country. And if you don't keep working to save this country, right, it's not going to matter Trump's mandate. It won't matter whether it's implemented or not. You have to do work. We all have to do the work to be better citizens, or otherwise it will be over. There's still a long ways to go. So how are we going to be successful? Well, number one, notice that the March for Life, the whole point, right? The obvious point of the March for Life is that everyone goes out and is not ashamed of what they believe and does something public, right, to show the rest of the country how many people there are who believe this and have this stance. And that brings awareness and attention. The left does this all the time. So the idea of the March for Life, just in terms of we stand together on this issue and being loud about it, right? And this is why it was such a big deal when the president actually showed up, right? Because the presidents were too scared, like the Bush wouldn't show up. Oh, the president can actually show up. He can call in, but it would be too controversial to show. If you're pro-life, you show up, right? You're not scared of the other side. And by doing that, you push public opinion and you win. Well, that in the middle of cancel culture is even more important than ever. If we're going to get rid of cancel culture, number one, take the message of the March for Life, which is that you have to be public increasingly to the point where it's uncomfortable. When it's uncomfortable, that's when you know it's probably not like offensive to anyone, right? But it's uncomfortable for you. That's when you know you're starting to do some work. That's when you're exercising the muscle. Because if you are afraid in 2025 to talk about your beliefs and respectfully say, you know, what you think in public, we are going to lose. We're only going to win if regular people in their regular lives, you know, go out and say what they think. That's number one. Number two is how the pro-life movement won in general. And in overturning Roe v. Wade. And the way they did that was very good sort of elite work or human work of building networks of judges, people in law over time, the Federalist Society, of people who were like-minded and getting people who thought Roe v. Wade was a terrible constitutional decision together and supporting those judges.
And, you know, the way they did that was really just getting people together, as in networking, as in having parties, as in having events where you talk about, you know, things that you're interested in and support each other over time. That led to the Supreme Court justices that were put on the court that overturned Roe v. Wade. Now, that sounds really lofty and involved people from fancy schools and whatever. But what I'm here to say to you today is that that applies in your own life in spades. It doesn't matter who you are. How you can establish networks of people of like mind in your own community. And in fact, it's important that you do that for your own health these days. Everyone's on their phones, everyone's alone. And that starts with just I'm going to have a dinner party once a week. I'm going to invite friends over. We're going to read an essay, right? If you're more nerdy, or we're just going to have dinner, and we're going to talk about a topic we're interested in, right? And you start routinely inviting people over to your house if you're able. That alone, the power of that over the course of years changes people's lives for good. And I'm not even talking about putting like a cause to it, right? I'm just talking about the networking over time in the free time you have of bringing people together who are associating for some like-minded reason is powerful. That will change local politics. That can change a city's politics. That can change a county's politics, because when you start bringing people together like that, and under the auspice of we agree on something, it has powerful knock-on network effects. And we've forgotten that, and we can't forget it. We need you to do it in order to win.
Yeah, building your network and your community, finding your tribe. It's so important to feel like you have a sense of belonging. But I do also want to just say, with the March for Life, there is no more important issue to get right, because if you can't get this right on the issue of life, then everything else is just a lesser matter. And there are so many big topics that we must still address. But the issue of life has to be a top priority still. And we are so fortunate that we have people out there that are willing to go take a stand and march with everyone there in Washington, D.C. And Matthew, in this last minute or so that we have left, I just want to take a look back at the week that we've had so far. I feel like it's like almost like a pinch me moment. Like, right, we won, first of all. It's happening. Donald Trump is in office and still somehow alive to be there and serve as president. And now we see these flurry of executive orders. He's going through. The Marines are down there on the border. He's in Western North Carolina and in Los Angeles trying to help people. There's been so many things that have happened in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I was thinking about this today as well. I mean, it's such a flurry. We can't keep up with it all. I mean, no one can, which is a great problem to have. None of us are tired of winning. But when you think about what's going on, think about all the things that were revealed by Trump the first time and what happened to us in the last 4 years. And what it revealed is problem after problem. And so these problems were all like, you couldn't ignore them anymore, right? And now you see a bunch of people applying all the solutions all at once.
It's a great time to be alive. Yes. It'll be a great weekend, hopefully, for Matthew Peterson. Everybody out there, please cheer for his Bills. He's going to have a tough weekend. We'll be back here to break it all down on Monday. We'll see if you get a win.
Not going to be tough at all.